Well, the match we've just seen fell a little bit flat. Michael van Gerwen through to his third successive Masters final, not at his best, but he's still beaten fellow two-time world champion Adrian Lewis 11-5 here in Milton Keynes, and he'll meet another double world champion in the final very shortly in Gary Anderson. Neither quite in the groove tonight. So many missed doubles, 12 between them in just the opening leg, which Van Gerwen crucially won, as it turned out. MVG 34% checkout rate in the end. He hit 8 maximums, averaging 101. 11-5 the final score. And Alan has popped up to join me up here on the gantry. Yeah. What did you make of that?
Well, from Adrian's point of view, it seemed to all go wrong from the word go. I mean, he missed a ton-plus finish in the first leg and then had 6 more darts. And from then on, he just looked really lethargic all the way through. It almost affected Michael at some point, and then he just ran away with it in the end.
Never really looked throughout that match that AD had the self-belief, whatever it was that he needed to actually win the game tonight. Maybe even in the pre-match interview, didn't quite look at it. Is that something to do with the long day that we have here? What is it?
Well, we say this all the time, don't we? Players should be used to this because there's so many tournaments that are this kind of format. But it just didn't look right from the word go, like you say. I don't know what that is, but sometimes if you don't get a spark in the game, you can sometimes be on the back foot all the way, and that's what just seemed to happen.
What can you do to kind of improve your stamina in these kind of finals days, do you think?
Do what Robert Thornton did, run around the block a couple of times. I mean, he was manic, wasn't he, when he was playing? You've just got to try and do what you think is right. It may not be the right for another player. He obviously thinks, in his experience, in all the years he's played, he's a twice world champion, knows what he's doing. He must have thought whatever he did was the right thing. It's not worked.
So Michael van Gerwen clearly doesn't have to be at his best to beat a number of players in the world. I mean, we haven't necessarily seen the very best of him so far. He started with a 105 average in his first round match, and something he said he wasn't particularly happy with. He hadn't focused yet, bearing in mind he's been on holiday for a couple of weeks. How do you think he's going to show up later on against Gary?
Well, he's playing for the title, isn't he? He knows he's playing the second best player in the world, so he knows he's going to have to play better. Both players will feel the same as well. They both know each other in top of the game. It should be a close game, but you can't afford to give anything to the other player or opponent, if you want to call it that way.
And from AD's point of view, he's got the Premier League starting next week.
Yeah.
How do you think he's going to kick on from here?
Well, to be fair to him, the first 2 rounds he played really well. Ton-plus averages, he just never got going in that game at all. And from the word go, if he'd have hit that double early on, it might have changed things. We just don't know that now. But when you miss so many doubles in the first leg, it really does get in your head.
And in terms of having a final very shortly, Michael van Gerwen has been here so many times. I mean, his 12th televised final in a row. What does he do now? He goes off, and does he manage to switch off at all?
He'll do exactly the same. He won't be worried. He'll just be up there. He'll want to know the exact time of his walk-on. He might sit down for a minute, just chill out, and then he'll just, in his head, know 5 or 10 minutes before the final starts. He'll be on that board, ready for the walk-on, and he'll be ready when he walks on stage. Do
you reckon he has the same routine every time, bearing in mind it's obviously very much a winning routine?
He just doesn't worry about it anymore, does he? Because he knows when he's on there, he can produce it all the time. Yeah, he hasn't played that well in some of the games this weekend, but still come out a convincing winner. So when he plays well, he knows it's very hard to beat. So confident.
What are you expecting later?
I'm hoping it's going to be a close game, because these 2 players are the best 2 players in the world, as we've said. So I'm hoping for a close game, because if it's close, then it puts pressure on your opponent as well. So we might get some strange moments, hopefully.
And the fans will really be up for that. Well, as ever, we've seen some impressive averages this weekend leading up to this last match, and you can expect more of the same in the final later on, surely, between those 2. Our 2 students of the game, Dan Dawson and Chris Mason, have been crunching the numbers. Now they're going to have a little look at how the figures stack up.
Well, yeah, it's a numbers game, darts. Love numbers and stats. And when you look at the first round here, they absolutely obliterated the record for the number of 180s in that opening round. We've seen more than a dozen ton-plus averages so far this weekend. We kind of expect one in the final. Does this show that the standard of PDC darts is going up and up and up, as it has done over the last few years?
Yeah, I think you just got to look at the games played in a far more professional environment. As you know, you cover some of these Pro Tour events. They're played in absolute silence, in perfect conditions, in their own little booths. They've got markers. There's no one screaming and shouting. So that gives them a chance to not only redevelop their own game, but obviously take their game higher. And you know, as with all types of technology, the technology in the dart and the specifications they can have, the dartboards obviously have moved on over the years. So, you know, it's no real shock, but it's still, even having been a player and still playing today, it's astounding with the regularity these guys just do it. Well, 100's almost par for the course now.
Well, look, let's have a look at the World Championship winners' stats over the last 30 years. So you go back, John Lowe won it back in the 80s with a 90, 97, it was Taylor with a 100 for Barney 10 years later. But then you look at the one that's just gone, Michael van Gerwen, he's averaged more than 107. His tournament average was over 106. Is that the level? The 100 average is no longer the mark of excellence?
Well, I think, it used to be 90. Anything over 30 for dart, you know, that was your thing when we were playing county and Super League. You know, anything over 30 was classed as, you know, elite level. But there was moments, the first ever 100 average on TV in a major event was hit by Keith Deller against John Lowe, and he lost the match. Which it was quite ironic because they waited, you know, it was... you know, in darting terms, that 100-plus average was like, you know, the 4-minute mile or whatever. You know, it was just one of them things that you never used to see. But, yeah, nowadays the 90, well, 100 is the old 90.
Well, we've got Michael van Gerwen, who's averaged 105, I was disappointed with that, because now, to make everybody really sit up and take notice, you're looking at 110. I mean, MVG himself hit 123 in the Premier League, and it was nearly 130 plus. I mean, that's the sort of ridiculous standard which we expect, you know, from the very, very best, the record-breaking performances now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it from Taylor over times in certain events, the Europeans, where he's had a tournament average of 108, 109, and I mean, you never thought that was ever going to be replicated. You know, there's one thing, Taylor's records will never get replicated in terms of titles won, but obviously as the game moves on, and as you said, Michael, he walks off with 105, and it feels to him probably like it's a 95, because they know what they're like in practice, they know what they've already achieved on stage, so they know they're capable of it in astronomical averages.
But this is the key thing, isn't it? Taylor was averaging, you know, he had days where he'd average 110 or 100 teens, but there wasn't really anybody else doing that while he was doing it. Now, Michael van Gerwen is averaging in the 100 teens, but you've got players all around the top 32 who are quite capable of going averaging 110 themselves. I mean, Phil Taylor lost with 115 average, of course.
Yeah.
So
Barney lost with 109.
Exactly, it's the strength in depth.
Yeah, there's more of it. I remember playing... before we got the introduction of the new HD board by Unicorn, I played Taylor at the match play and hit the 9-darter. I averaged 100, he averaged 113 near on, and I got buried 16-7. And, you know, once that came along, you thought, well, surely over that course and distance, we're never going to see anything like it again. But they just continue to... And there's another, you know, breed of player behind it who now feel like, well, 100 average is average.
Well, yeah, I mean, Corey Cadby's the obvious one who's turned up and thrown ton-plus averages of fun. But the question is, if so many of them are now capable of throwing 110 plus, how good could they get?
I don't... I mean, I know we've seen 120 pluses, but over a short race, I'd be amazed if we got anything like that over, you know, sort of a World Championship finals. I mean, Gary's and Michael's final was just ridiculous. 42 180s in 10 sets. You know, will we ever see the likes of that again? You know, your instant reaction would be no. I mean, mine and Ted's 34 we thought would, or 34 we thought would never get beat. You know, I think they beat that in 8 sets or something. It's just, where does it end? Who knows? I mean, they just make the game look so easy. I think with golf they make it harder. You know, and I think there has to become a point to almost make it a more level playing field, but they've got to start making darts harder. But the problem is they want all the 180s, and you know, it's a double-edged sword, but I'd make it more difficult, personally. I'd make the ball smaller, not bigger.
Right, I knew you'd get your game with Ted in there somewhere. In answer to the question, how good could they be? We don't know, but Mace wants them playing the dark and blindfolded.
Yeah, make it a little bit more difficult for these young whippersnappers these days. But in terms of the averages, I mean, Michael van Gerwen has said that he's only really happy when he's averaging 120. How many people in the world could say, well, obviously nobody?
I'm sure he is. I think anybody, I'm sure that was more tongue-in-cheek, but a little bit of response as well. But the players are getting better. And I think the key for higher averages now is you're getting fewer visits to the board. If you're throwing second, generally in the professional game, you're only getting 4 visits, or even 3. So that's why the averages are getting higher and higher all the time, because the players are close. MVG's up there, Anderson, there's a big group behind, but all these players are now playing so well, you don't get as many visits to the board.
Got to throw in there the Your 106 average, still a record for the Grand Prix.
Oh, Michael's still upset about that. He said he's going to do it this year.
That's his next target. Not long to wait now. It's a repeat of the World Championship final. Michael van Gerwen takes on Gary Anderson, and that's coming right up after this break.